the draft. It's going to be a big one for the Browns. What do you think? What do you hope for? I think as of right now, it's first and fourth pick. What do you think? What do you hope for? Just elaborate. Tell us everything about the draft and what you want to see happen.
All right. What I hope for is a lot of good offensive players. Being a defensive guy, I think we played pretty good on defense last year. I think they're probably going to go with the quarterback number one. I think that's the consensus. I would personally want to take Barkley number one. I think he'd be a great running back, but I'm not in the front office. They don't pay me to make those decisions, so we'll see, I guess. And then with number four, I think they could go a couple of ways, either with a defensive back, a running back if Barkley's still there, or the defensive end guy, Chubb, I keep hearing about. So I'm as clueless as everybody else on what's going to happen, but that's what I would like from my point of view, kind of going into it. That's what I'd like to see. So hopefully we get a lot of good offensive players in the draft. That's my preference.
Who wants to see Barkley? For that first pick, I mean. Who wants him to go quarterback with the first one? All right, when you see the fans split like that, Felix, what do you think? I mean, same question, I guess, to you. Where should the Browns go in this draft? Tell us your thoughts.
Well, my thought is, I think, since our head coach has been dreaming about this, he says that he's dreamed about Garrett and Chubb playing together. Is that what he's been saying, I think, here of late? I think so. So I wouldn't mind taking Chubb, because I think that would boost our defensive line. Plus, it also help Joe out. Keep those offensive linemen off him so he can make more tackles than he did this year. So, and then I think with the second pick, Barkley would be a good pick for us, because we actually have a pretty good running back now. I think Carlos Hyde from Ohio State. We got any Buckeye fans in there? Yeah. Well, I know you guys are too loud because he's a Badger here, so. But I think with the fourth pick, I think Barkley would be a good addition, or any one of the corners or the safety. I know they got a good corner down at Ohio State. That would be good. But I think I think we need some help in a lot of different areas. And so I think anybody that they choose to pick would be a good pick. I'm not so much with the quarterback, because I think Tyrod Taylor is going to be able to hold over for a couple of years, and it might buy us some time to where we can fill some other holes that we may need right now currently.
So the two of you have experienced obviously much different times in Cleveland with the team. Felix, I want to ask you what you think of Browns fans. And you had a different experience than you had, Joe, because I'm going to ask you the same question. So my guess is that you think Browns fans are awesome.
Yes.
My guess is that you think Browns fans are dicks. So I'm sorry. I'm bad with that. I promise, Howard. I get one, right, Howard? Sorry. Can you tell us your impression of Browns fans from when we were in that prime, when you were playing, when we were good, and how they've changed, if they've changed? What do you think? And ultimately, do you think Browns fans have the right to be upset right now?
Absolutely, they should be upset by what happened. There's a lot of things that happened. There's a lot of things that's not in the players' control. Because if they pick the players and not the correct players, it could cause problems. Not to say, that our general manager and our front office back in the time were good. It's just the luck of the draw. And I know that the Browns are going to come back stronger this year. We're going to win some games and start that process of getting better as we go, and hopefully get to the big one, as we tried to back in the day. As far as the fans, I think that we had great fans, but it was, we won lots of games back then, and it was great. The city was painted orange. I think it's a Browns town for sure, and I love them to death. I've been to Browns backers events throughout the country: San Diego, Florida. We didn't make it to the one in London this year, but the one in London, who I think the lady here was at, they had thousands of Browns backers that are way over in London. So I thought that was a pretty awesome outcome for that. But as far as the Browns fans, they're loyal, and I think they're just holding on, waiting for big things to happen coming up this season.
Joe, in all seriousness, same question, and I do understand that you've experienced a much different Browns fan base than Felix got to experience. What do you think of Browns fans, in all honesty, and it's okay, and do you think Browns fans have the right to be a little bit angry, and I just want to help you out by saying that I can empathize with you right now, and you're the one who's out there getting your clock cleaned. You know what I mean? So if somebody's going to go up there and be like, they should do this, they should do that, you're like, yeah, shut up. I get that. So I wouldn't blame you if you didn't like it. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we haven't put a good product in the field for a couple of years. So if I was, as a fan of sports, especially other sports, if my team wasn't doing good, I wouldn't be very happy as well. So, but all the Browns fans I've met in person and people who have come up and introduced themselves to me have always been kind and hopeful and excited for the next season. And I really think this year, especially with the moves we've made so far in the offseason, things are going to be trending upwards. We've got the new offensive coordinator. Hugh Jackson's just going to be the head coach. He's not going to be stretching his time between too many different tasks, which I think he did this last couple of years. And on defense, I know last year we took a major step up, and we're going to continue doing that on defense. So as long as offense, defense, and everybody keeps improving, I think we're going to put a good product on the field, and everybody's going to be able to finally enjoy the success that has kind of been lacking.
Yeah. Felix, you didn't go straight to the NFL. You actually became a teacher.
I did. That's crazy, huh?
I was reading an interesting story about when you did finally get a tryout. You went to try out for the Oilers. I was wondering if you could share that story with us.
Yeah, it's not the way I wanted to get there, but I stuck with it. I graduated out of Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. We were a Division I school, and we played the Big 8. Back then it was the Big 8, now it's the Big 12, but we didn't get a lot of recognition. It wasn't on TV or things such as that. But wasn't given a lot of opportunities coming out. Actually, I got a couple of letters from a couple of teams, but got a couple of letters from a couple of agents, but never that opportunity ever came to me my senior year. So what happened is I graduated 4 years and went back home to Missouri where I grew up and got a teaching job to the rival school that I used to play against, and I taught history, physical education, and I was actually a football, basketball, baseball coach, and track. Did a little bit of track, and did that for a year. And then I was out at practice one day with a couple of the coaches that I played softball with. We were, practicing one day, and we weren't doing all that well on defense, so Coach wanted me to go out and demonstrate some things to the players who out, the way it should be done with the linebackers and the safeties. And they were kind of a little impressed with my build, because I stayed in pretty good shape. Tried to, because anytime I'd ask any of the ball players to do anything, I'd actually do it with them. So I was out there showing them some moves and, made a few interceptions. And when we came in for practice that day, the coaches said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm coaching. And they just said, well, you should be playing somewhere. And I'm like, oh, stop it. Go ahead with that. And what they did is they put that ideal in my head. And I went back home that night because I still lived with my parents at the time. And I asked my mom if she still had that letter with all my school books from Drake, because I have a letter in there from an agent that I really never replied to. And his name was Elliot Lehman from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And my mom found my books, and she found a letter. And that evening, I called up Elliot. And I said, Elliot, this is Felix Wright. I'm from Drake University. He says, I know who you are. How come you didn't respond to my letter? And I'm like, well, I figured that if somebody wanted me, they'd give me a call. That's usually how it works. And so we talked for about 10 minutes, and I said, well, Elliot, I would like to give it a shot. If you can get me a tryout or, whatever, I'd be able to let it go. Not that it's really in my mind, it's just that the coaches thought that I did pretty good against the high school students. I said, so if you could give me a tryout somewhere, that'd be great. If you can, I understand, because I've been out of football for a year. So he called me back a couple of days later, and he says, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And I said, well, give me the good news first. And he says, well, I got you 2 tryouts. And I'm like, oh, man, that's awesome. And he says, I said, well, okay, well, what's the bad news? What could it possibly be? He said, well, they're both on the same day, so you have to decide which one you want to go to. So it's either go to Houston or go to Detroit. And since I had to pay for it on a teacher's salary, I decided to go to Houston because it was only a couple hours away. So, I had about a month to get ready for it. And so my uncle took off work and he drove me down to Houston, Texas, just for a day workout. and it was a Friday-Saturday deal. And so my workout was on Saturday. So on Friday we got there and we pulled up and they had kind of the first group of guys, which was they had 300 guys there. And when you pull up to something like that and have 300 fellas there, you're like, wow, man, this is a waste of time. So I says, you know what, let's just turn around and get out of here because I'm not going to get a legitimate look. And my uncle said, well, you know what, I took off work, you're going to work out. I said, all right. So we went back to the hotel. I stretched, got ready, got focused, and went in there the next day. Lifted, did the kind of the combine thing. You lift weights and you do the agility drills and you catch a few passes. And I was there for about 30 minutes. And what they did is, and there was about another 300 people there on Saturday. And so the 300 guys that were there on Friday was there as well, watching us work out. And they blew the whistle after about 30 minutes and said, hey, we'd like to thank all you guys for coming and working out for us. And out of about 600 people, we picked 3. I'm like, wow, 3. And I was the second name picked, which was pretty crazy. So I guess I worked out and played pretty well while I was there. And so that day, so they had me come back the next day. I signed a 3-year contract with the Houston Oilers, and it was a pretty crazy deal. So I went back home and kind of had to tell the school that what had happened. So they gave me till August 30th to where if I was going to be on the team, I would be okay, or I'd have to resign. And so I finished up school and moved down to Houston and worked out in the off-season program and had a great time down there. Learned a lot of stuff and went into camp and thought I played pretty well. Actually, it's probably the best training camp I've ever had. And made it through all 4 games. And on August 29th, my school called me up and said, looks like you're going to make it. You're going to be okay. And I said, well, it looks like it. I guess I have to resign from school. And so I resigned from school. And about 2 hours later, I got the call saying, we're sorry. So I was without a job for, about a couple of days. But what I did is I played well enough in those preseason games, and that's what I tell, because I kind of consult and mentor ball players now, is that you never know when that time might come, so you got to always stay ready. But I played well, and in that camp. And in fact, my coach's name was Kenny Houston. And Kenny Houston is a Pro Bowler and a Hall of Famer that played with the Houston Oilers back in the day. He said, Felix, I had nothing to do with that decision. I fought for you as much as I could. They overruled me, but you'll be playing in this league one day. I'm like, okay. But at the time I was pretty down about the situation. But anyway, I went home and stayed there for a day, and I got some calls from a Canadian Football League team called the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Didn't know anything about the Canadian Football League. Actually didn't know anything about Toronto or Canada, period. And so they talked me into coming up there, and they put me on like a 14-day trial. And basically, it was just kind of an audition to play up in the CFL. And so, after a couple of days of practice, I just they signed me on to a full contract for the rest of the year because they were already halfway through their season up there. And I actually got there on a Wednesday, practiced Thursday, Friday. Saturday, we flew to Edmonton, Alberta, and played in a game on Sunday against the Edmonton Eskimos, and their quarterback's name was Warren Moon. You guys have heard that name, right? And that's when it all started. When he saw the new guy out there, and after about his 4th pass my way, I took it all the way back, and that was the start of my CFL career. Yeah. And then, after that season, which was only like 4 games remaining of that season, they signed me to a 2-year deal, and those next 2 years I made the All-Star team up there, which is the Pro Bowl, and played up there and played in the Grey Cup my last season there, and played well enough to where I got an opportunity to come back and get some opportunities back in the league. And I had about 6 teams that were after me, and the Cleveland Browns won out. And it was the best move I've made in my football career. and that's how it went down.
That's great. That's great. Great story. Joe, which of your teammates last season was your favorite teammate to play with? Somebody who you really felt pushed you and maybe you pushed them too. I don't know if it was that kind of relationship or just somebody that you always felt pushed you throughout the season.
I think there's two different questions for me. My favorite teammate was Danny Shelton, so I was sad to see him go to the Patriots, but playing behind Danny and just having him around the facility, he's probably the funniest guy, funniest human being I've ever been around. I remember in London when we played the Vikings, he was chasing the running back to the sideline, and the running back stepped out of bounds, and Danny was like, "Oh, that was a smart decision, I'm going to get you." And then the very next play, Danny splits a double team, and before he hits the running back, because I was right behind him, I heard him yell, "I told you I was coming," and then smacked him. And I went down to one knee, and I was just laughing in the middle of the field, in the middle of play, because it was the funniest thing I ever seen on a football field. But in terms of probably the person who pushed me the most would probably be Christian Kirksey, and Jamie Collins, my other two linebackers, because they're both obviously been in the league a while. Pro Bowls, second contracts, so they've been around, and I was in charge of them, so it was being the Mike linebacker, getting everybody set up, so they had to listen to me, so they made sure I knew how I was doing, otherwise they'd give me a hard time. So I think those two guys really pushed me the most last year.
You made the Pro Bowl this year. What was that experience like? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
How cool was that?
I mean, we did have the Pittsburgh Steelers coaches on our staff, so that was kind of weird, but it was really just like a vacation. We'd go down there and you walk through for an hour, and Von Miller was going, he never listened to one word of practice. He was playing catch with fans the whole time. The only coach that took it seriously was the Steelers D-line coach. He was trying to yell at everybody and the DBs, and the DBs were just sitting in the huddle arguing who was the best and not paying attention. So only the linebackers, me and the guy from the Jaguars, can't remember his name, Telvin Smith. We were the only two guys who really listened the whole time, so he talked to us and he liked us out of everybody. But it was just a vacation, because then after that you could go to Disney World, you could go to Universal Studios, enjoy the weather, even though it was only like 60 and rainy, but it was better than Cleveland at the time, so it was a lot of fun.
As far as opposing teams go, who's the biggest trash talker you've played against?
Well, Steve Smith, when he was still in the NFL. Nobody likes Steve Smith in the NFL. People outside of it maybe do, but nobody in the NFL likes Steve Smith. He's probably the biggest trash talker, but he'd been in the league a long time, and I guess he kind of earned the right to be able to talk. But other than that, I really haven't seen too much or too many people be too bad. I mean, individual O&D linemen will go at it for a little bit, but nobody's been like a chronic trash talker that I've really noticed.
Felix, you had some very famous contract negotiations. If you Google Felix Wright contract negotiations, there's a lot of stories out there.
None of them are true.
One of them, did David, well, I'm going to ask you the big question, but one of them that I saw, David Modell supposedly waved his cigar at you and shouted, "And not a penny more." Is that true? And in general, the bigger question is, what were those contract negotiations like? If you can take us inside as much as you're willing to share, I understand.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, that was kind of a crazy situation, because Minifield and I, there was Minifield, myself, Clay Matthews, and I think Webster Slaughter and Reggie Langhorne were holding out that year, because we played well and our contracts had ran out, so we thought we deserved a pay raise. And that particular year, my younger brother, who was with Dallas and with Tampa Bay the previous 2 years, signed on with the Cleveland Browns in training camp. And so my family came in for that game, which was the second preseason game. So myself and Minifield decided to go to the game and go with my family. So what we did is we got to the stadium, and I had to go over to Will Call and get the tickets. Okay. And as you know, in the old stadium, the facilities, the coaching and where the management was at was right there by the ticket office. So when we walked around the corner, to go in, David Modell was there. And so David was obviously upset because we were all holding out and it was affecting the roster and what was going on. And he had a cigar, but he didn't do all that. They say he did. But I don't, for whatever, I don't know how the media got there so fast because all this took place in about 2 or 3 minutes. But anyway, he did have a cigar, and he was like, "Felix, we need you in there. We need you to step in there, and we're not going to give you a penny more." And I'm like, "Well," I said, "I think that's the reason why I have an agent. You need to talk to him. Don't talk to me." So that's kind of how it all went down. But before we knew it, the media was there taking pictures, the whole works. But Dave and I, we kind of kissed and made up, so it was all good. But that was actually Dave's first contract negotiation he was given a part of because he was obviously the owner's son. And he wanted to get involved, and I just happened to be the first contract he was trying to get done, and so he was trying to make a good impression by getting me, I guess, pretty reasonably priced, which didn't happen. But it worked out to where I was able to become a free agent because then we had more leverage at the time because, at the time when I played, the reason why we struck, as I went through 2 strikes, is because of the free agency part to be able to have some leverage. And so that was when they had the Plan B back then. So I actually, after that year, I was able to be eligible for Plan B to where I could kind of negotiate, maybe put some pressure on them. And actually that year, we actually didn't play very well. We didn't have a very good record there. So it kind of opened up the door for me to move on. And that's kind of how I moved on to the Vikings from there for a couple of years.
As a Northeast Ohio native myself, I know how much you love Cleveland, and I really appreciate that. Was it heartbreaking to leave when you did leave?
It was real hard because when as a ball player, you obviously got to bargain for the max contract, and unfortunately in sports, it seems as though you have to go somewhere else to get your money, which is really crazy. Because I felt that in the 6 years I played with Cleveland, I felt that I had earned the right because I led the league in interceptions. I actually led the league as far as defensive backs and tackles. So I did the max that I can do in my position, and they still really didn't want to pay me the max dollars. But I had the Vikings that actually wanted to pay me and give me more than what I asked for. And then Cleveland wanted to match it, and I was a little bent out of shape at the time, and I told them no. And that was the reason why I kind of moved on. But I have to give it to Belichick and also Nick Saban because they tried to communicate with me to stick around. But like I said, it was too far damaged, so I moved on out.
What do those two know? You know what I mean?
Absolutely, they don't know much.
Joe, speaking of contract and playing the NFL, I mean, this is a dream come true. Is this something you dreamed about since you were a kid, playing in the NFL?
Yeah, I think like every other kid growing up playing sports, you dream about it. You see it on TV, everybody. Especially being in a family that loves sports, I watched with my parents and my uncles, and everybody would go out in the yard and try to replicate all the passes and all the plays that we saw on the field that day. And growing up in Wisconsin, watching the guys like Brett Favre just run on the field and sling the ball around and look like they're having the time of their lives obviously made it better. And so I as a kid, I definitely had that dream.
So I ask this question every year. It's a little bit of a personal question, but people always tell me that's one of their favorite questions. What was it like when you get your first NFL paycheck? And all of a sudden, I don't know what kind of family you come from, but I'm assuming broke college kid like everybody else, busting your ass, playing football, and all of a sudden somebody puts a piece of paper in front of you, and it's like, this is what we're going to give you to play football. I mean, what is that actually like?
I mean, it was a little surreal because, first of all, they didn't even give me a check. They just direct deposit right into your bank account, and you just see the numbers, and you're just, like, coming from college, you don't really have an understanding of how to manage your money or budget or anything. So it's just kind of like, is that really, like, if I go and buy something, like, do I actually have the money to pay for it? Or, like, it was funny. But luckily, like, growing up, my mom's a financial analyst, so she knows what she's doing. And
she probably spoiled the fun, didn't she?
Yeah, so she spoiled the fun, but it's good. Hopefully, all my retirement funds down the line will be in good shape.
Yeah, that's true. That's great. Felix, what is the biggest hit you remember giving and the biggest hit you remember getting?
Well, probably the biggest hit that I've known for, they still play it every once in a while, is the one against Don Beebe. And that's the one where we were in the playoff game and nationally televised. It's kind of the game you kind of you want to kind of perform for your boys back at home. So it was just one of those deals where Jim Kelly kind of threw the ball over the middle, and we just happened to get there at the same time, and we hit him, and he landed on his head. And actually, that's his player's card. It's pretty wild. Yeah. And the biggest hit I didn't take too many of those hits. But, yeah. But there's been a few times. Actually, as a defensive player, you're supposed to issue the hits, not take the hits. But my first couple of years, I played special teams, and I was on the front line of the kickoff return team, which I really hated to do because I was really light at the time. And when you're running back forwards and you got these big guys running back at you, so I got kind of drove back to the goal line, but I had the ice cube back there so the ice cube could run and he got around him. So that's probably one of the harder hits I probably took. But I was already going in that direction. I just let him just keep taking me on.
Joe, same question.
Yeah, well, I agree with the special teams aspect, even though I was about 250 pounds my rookie year, and I was doing the same thing. And still, when you got to get 6'3", 250-pound guys running full speed at you and you're going backwards, it's not very fun on the special teams. But I think as the hardest hit I've given, we played the Patriots last year. It was Tom Brady's first game back after that Deflategate suspension. So he was pretty motivated, but I was able to get Julian Edelman across the middle of the field once. Broke up the pass and was able to drive him into the ground pretty good. So, I mean, that's probably one of the better ones I remember.
I heard that the NFL is getting rid of the color rush uniforms this year on Thursday Night Football. And I've also heard that players don't necessarily like all the different crazy apparel that sometimes they make you guys wear, the weird uniforms. What are your thoughts on the color rush uniforms in general?
I think sometimes they work out well, and a lot of times they don't. So, I mean, when we played, it was just white. We just were in all white. So I thought that actually looked good. But I really don't have a preference. I like the classic, the just brown jerseys with the white pants is probably my favorite Browns look. So, not too attached to it.
Last question for each guy. Felix, prediction for the season.
Well, I think we're going to do much better than we did the last couple of years, which I think is real important for the city of Cleveland, and I think it's real important for the ball players that are on there. I'm rooting for them. I've always rooted for them. As far as prediction, I think we're going to, I see, 4, 5, 6 wins would be great. I think, I think that's a start, and then from there, I mean, obviously they're going to get our hopes up after that, and then the following year is going to be even higher. But eventually, as everybody, when they go into training camp and they go into the season, everybody wants to get to the big game. So, that's probably the ultimate goal, is that we want to get to the big game. But first, here in Cleveland, we need to win a few games so we can, keep everything intact. And it's a process, and I think that sometimes. We've been going through the process for a long time. But I think we got the right people in place now, which is really important. And I think that's going to relieve a lot of pressure, for the organization as well. So, I think 5 to 6 wins would be great. And if we get more, that'd be wonderful.
Nice. Joe, same question. Prediction for the season?
Well, I'm going 8+ wins with my prediction. I think last year, even with Deshaun, a 21-year-old kid playing quarterback in the NFL, the hardest thing to do is coming in and playing as a quarterback. And we still should have won 4 or 5 games. There was 4 or 5 games where we were in it right to the end, and obviously inexperience played a big part in that. So I think just supplanting him with Tyrod and just a guy who will take care of the ball and be a serviceable quarterback at worst, we'll get those 4 or 5 wins. And I just think continuing to jump on last year, our defense will play a lot better. Offensively, Josh Gordon, Jarvis Landry as receivers would be great deep threats. And if we get Barkley in the draft as running back, or Duke Johnson, or Carlos Hyde, I think we'll have a good running game. And I think the sky's the limit. So I'm going 8+ wins.
It does feel like it this year, doesn't it? It feels like it. It feels like it. I don't know if you saw that video Jarvis Landry put out on Instagram of all the guys. The team has some swagger this year, at least the offensive guys, and it looks exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, Felix Wright and Joe Schobert. Give it up.
Come on, old man.
Oh yeah, thank you guys. I believe we have one more quick little, tell folks they are welcome to take the centerpieces. You're welcome to take the centerpieces. There you go. Howard, did you had one last announcement you wanted to make? Oh, you're good? Okay, I thought I saw that in the script. Okay, all right, thank you everybody so much for coming. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.